Hey, Carl, now that Pulsar Security is going to be sponsoring the podcast directly, you want to hear the ad copy that we came up with?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, get ready for this. In a world full of security challenges.
No. We can't say in a world.
Come on, that sounds perfect.
You think we should?
It's like an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie
You
cliche.
think we should leave it open for services on Mars? Is that what you're saying? I mean,
you can't.
Okay.
All right, just go ahead and read the rest of it.
Can I say in a world or no?
Go for it. I don't care.
In a world full of security challenges, trust is everything.
Well, that's true.
At Pulsar Security, we are enabling organizations to thrive safely in an ever-changing digital world.
Yeah.
Our experts conduct cutting-edge cybersecurity services, ensuring your business stays one step ahead of threats.
All good.
Experience peace of mind as we deliver robust solutions tailored to your needs. Your security is our priority. I like that one.
Mm-hmm.
Choose Pulsar Security for a safer tomorrow. Visit us at pulsarsecurity.com. Empower your digital journey with confidence. Security starts here.
Okay. I like everything but
Okay.
in a world.
It worked for Batman.
I do like to
This
dress
is
dark and in
serious.
hoodies.
Now, this is serious stuff here, man. You're talking about keeping companies safe.
Yeah, we are talking about that.
Like
don't wanna
cyber superheroes. Come on, Carl.
Conjure up images of the predator, you know?
Well, we should have done this from the start. So now we are officially sponsoring Security This Week by Pulsar Security.
Well, good luck with your ad.
Thanks.
Hey, guys, what's the lowest price you've seen for gas in New Hampshire?
Today, I think $3.40.
Wow.
Yeah, probably 340, 350.
Well, I found a place where you can fill up your car with gas for only $2.99. Fill it up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Damn.
It's called Taco Bell.
Whole car full.
Yeah. What's new, guys?
Oh, some good stories today.
And some very scary stories.
That's what makes them good.
Scary. The most awesome.
Didn't we say good?
Yeah. The scariest one we'll save for later, but it has to do with AI, and we'll leave it there. Okay.
That's all you have to say. That's all you have to say.
Right.
You've scared most of the people.
It's Terminator time.
Let's talk about that. Terminators. So first story is about the U.S. Air Force confirming the first successful AI dogfight.
Yeah.
And I have been tracking this closely for a while now.
Apparently it was last year, right? And
It was.
they
Back
just
in
confirmed it.
2020, this isn't part of the story. This is a The Verge story.
Mm-hmm.
But to add some context, back in 2020, the U.S. Air Force put into a simulator an AI that they had been developing. And I think the Navy's actually weighed in on it as well. And I think it had 1 billion flight hours, and it had all sorts of, really advanced technology.
Mm-hmm.
And it was successfully beating pretty much any comer as part of a simulation. Well, in 2022, they put it into an actual F-16.
Yeah, this is a specialized F-16 that DARPA has created that has, the AI stuff in it.
So they've taken the self-driving cars and taken it to the sky.
Yeah.
So now the key here is dogfighting is considered the hardest task for a pilot. The large,
Right.
the OODA loops, the observe.
Yeah, this ain't no 747 autopilot cruising from one city to another.
No, there are things to hit in the sky.
Yeah.
In this situation. So it's really like the highest mental load on a pilot. So that's why they do it. The F-35 program is planning to have 2 dedicated drones to fly with each F-35 with this capability. So an F-35 pilot can fly around and say, hey, see that enemy? Go kill it.
Yeah.
See that SAM down on, surface-to-air missile launcher? Go kill that. And keep the pilot out of harm's way while controlling these platforms.
Right. But this one, there was actually a pilot on board during this flight, and they were, just there in case the AI failed, and they didn't have to take the controls.
No.
It basically was the person just went along for the ride.
Now, if you take that person out, you enable the plane to do things that it can't do with a person on board.
Yeah.
And this is the scary stuff.
Yeah. So
How many G's can a normal pilot, you think, pull?
I think anything above 5 is really dicey. You could have the pilot black out.
Right.
I think 10 is the most anybody could even think about control.
But the machines can handle more than that.
Yes.
There's the benefit, because without a pilot on board, they can, do like really tight loops and things that would would make a pilot pass out.
And you don't need an oxygen system, and you don't need a communication system.
Right.
You don't need a lot of the things.
Isn't it just a drone at that point?
It is, but it's a drone
drone
that can actually do a dogfight, which is not something anybody else has.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I think that we've cut off the chips to China is because if we had not done that, China would be developing this at the same time, and I think they would outproduce us. But as it is, I don't think they can.
Why do you think they'd outproduce us?
They have a larger industrial base of production. They're building more ships and things like that. They have more people. So they can build more. There's 3 times more people in China than there are in the United States. So if they decided to build as many planes as they could probably build more than us. But if they don't have the AI, they can't.
Right.
So anyways, that's my geopolitical view. But this is going to see more about this. It's going to become a lot less fantastical and futuristic, but it's going to become more and more of a deterrent for our enemies.
But we are going to be playing whack-a-mole with these countries because eventually they'll get it, It's just like the same thing we had with nukes.
Yeah, but we'll be well beyond them.
Yeah, hopefully.
So I think this is cool.
Yeah, it is kind of cool. All right. So Ivanti, Ivanti, warns of critical flaws in its Avalanche MDM solution. I guess one of you guys ought to explain what Avalanche MDM is.
Yeah, absolutely. So MDM typically in an enterprise environment is considered mobile device management.
Okay.
So it's like, how do you manage when there's this big bring your own device to work thing, right? People bring iPhones and iPads and the Android devices and whatever it is, and how do you allow them access to the internet? How do you do that safely, etc. Avanti's a little bit different. They call their MDM the modern device management, not mobile.
Oh, see what I did there?
And it's because they can manage more than just an iPhone.
Okay.
So they can do Windows devices, and they can do Linux devices, and all sorts of
Cricket devices.
Cricket devices. Amazing. So they give this sort of seamless user interface for mobile end user endpoint management, protecting devices in essence.
Yeah.
Well, so bring your own devices is whether if you use a tablet for work, if you use a phone, but if you use a laptop or even a desktop from your house.
Yeah. Yep.
So I think that makes sense.
So in this case, they have like secure app distribution, secure email, just allows you to keep monitoring everything that's going on that device.
This has been my experience that companies that are serious about security don't allow BYOD.
Yeah.
They don't. They want to issue you a special iPad that you can use to take notes in meetings, and it stays at work and it's locked down and all that.
There is a penalty towards productivity in that because that means that are you going to carry 2 devices or are you just not going to have your work phone on you when you're off, when you're on vacation?
Is everybody going to have to wear a purse or a MERS?
Yeah, the military is a good example of that. The U.S. military plays that game where they don't let you use your personal phone. You have to lock it in a safe when you go inside the secure building. Well,
I've worked for companies remotely where they send you a laptop and you can't even boot the laptop unless you put in the right password. And if that password expires or there's something, you type it wrong.
That's true.
You're screwed. You have to call the help desk and it's just a nightmare.
But a lot of that's managed by mobile device management. They put policies on those devices to make sure they're secure and locked down and managed the right way. And you get the same interface no matter what laptop you get and that sort of stuff. Yeah. So in this particular case with Avanti, coming sort of back to the story here, there were 27 vulnerabilities in their Avalanche mobile device management solution, which is a sub product under one of their solutions.
Wow.
Allowing for all sorts of unauthenticated remote code executions. There's like there's a front end website that the users can visit. And from there, users could execute with system-level privileges. So
what kind of red light district do you have to go to get 27 different diseases that
double rapid kids? Yeah, no, that's it's interesting because you always wonder, like, okay, 27 was that they just happened to trip over 27 of them and go, oh my god, look at all these? Probably not.
That's the code that Earl worked on.
Yeah, right, exactly. They fire a guy and they go, hey, let's check his code.
Earl has a drinking problem, by the
way. Or maybe Earl has a gambling problem and there's another nation paying him to add exploits.
That's right. Hey.
Well, it could also be they hired some specialists to find all these things, and then the person did their job and came up with 27 vulnerabilities.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And that's more often than not when we see this many. Like if you see 1 or 2 or 3 sort of critical vulnerabilities. They could have been found exploited in the wild. They could have just been tripped over by a security researcher who was looking at it. But when you find 27, it's generally, this is the result of either a code audit, code review. They had a security professional come in and look through all their code and say, yep, this can be exploited, this can be exploited. And then generally what will happen in a code review is, take for myself, for example, if a company hires me and says, hey, we'd like you to do a red team or a pen test of a web application, right? Super easy. You look at it to the outside like a normal user, and that's it. But if they say, hey, we want you to do a code review, that's that really deep level. They give you all the code, you look through it, and as experts in understanding how you'd manipulate a system, that's where you go, okay, I could manipulate this. And this piece of code that's about 15 calls down in the stack, I can execute that by giving it a certain command. Let me walk that back to the user interface and see how I might be able to manipulate that.
Wow.
So that's where you start to see like 27 and 40 exploits is somebody
and
really
this is an
dug in
attempt
there.
by the company to get rid of the 0 days before they become weaponized, before somebody, uses it without our knowledge. It's good. This is the sign of a good company. So it's actually a good look for Ivanti to have this. Whereas if they had 27 announcements of 27 different vulnerabilities 3 weeks apart, that's death of 1,000 cuts.
Although our last story may make all of that moot.
True.
You got to stick around, kids. This is scary shit.
Not the AI. But yeah, no, and being that this company, their focus is security and management. It'd be like a financial hedge fund organization saying, yeah, we just lost all of our money, but give us some more and we'll invest it. Right. So generally you don't want to, for a company that does cybersecurity and protection of endpoints, you want to make sure that they have the best software out there. So, good for them for going through and figuring these out and patching it quickly.
Yeah. Okay. So, we came up with a new way to denigrate somebody or something just by adding SH to the front of it. So my wife's mad at me. She calls me shusband. And my ex-husband is a shittiot.
Well, that one works on many levels.
No. But I mean, once you know shittiot, then anything could be like, shut up, Shatrick. You shackers.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. We'll see if that goes viral.
Yeah.
With the 5 listeners that we have.
I know, right? Grandma's going to say it all the time now.
Grandma's going to say, I can't even think of anything. All right, never mind. So, are we done? You patch it now?
Absolutely. If you're running any of the Ivanti systems, specifically the Avalanche mobile device management, just go patch. There are patches out there they already have released. Okay.
And because Windows has been kind of not really in our news feeds lately, but some of their stuff has. But anyway, this story is in the Hacker News. Researchers uncover Windows flaws, granting hackers rootkit-like powers. Ooh, sounds bad.
Yeah.
I really like this one. So as hackers, we're always looking for the gaps in between the security systems. Right? It's like, when you go to, in the medieval days, if you were to attack somebody in armor, right, you don't hit them straight in the metal plate in their chest. You look for the gaps in between the armor. And we do the same thing. And as systems like Windows have been around since the mid 90s, right, there's a lot of gaps in those sort of integration points, right? So,
well, and you can predict it because the code's written by different groups and teams. And that's the integration is often done by even a third team who doesn't understand the two components.
Right.
Yeah, and it's tough too because you got to imagine, like, let's say I'm a new developer working on a new piece of Windows, but I have to also support backward compatibility with the myriad of applications and custom built pieces of software that are out there that everybody knows and loves and has been using for the last 2 decades. I can't be the developer who comes in and goes, you know what? We're not going to do regular Windows paths anymore because they're exploitable. We're just going to change that, right?
I remember talking to a consultant who worked at Microsoft, Jeff Richter, on .NET Rocks, but a long, long time ago. And he was a consultant, but he had an office and a desk at Microsoft, and he was working on Windows. And he said, you should see the source code. And I don't know how they let him say this, but he says the source code in Windows literally has stuff like if running application equals Lotus 1, 2, 3, then do... It literally has conditional statements for particular applications that have special requirements.
That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
That's interesting.
That was a long time ago, though.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Think about that. Let's say some of that bleeds into Windows today. Let's say, if you're running, a 4090 video card, then we know we can offload some of the processing to 4090 or whatever. Let's leverage that as Windows, right? And they dip into the hardware abstraction layer and they check to see whether it's a 4090. What if I install a driver saying, I'm a 4090, and now it's handing me processes to calculate, right? Then I might just give it false calculations or do something that's going to allow me, access to a certain part of the system. So, yeah, it's absolutely interesting.
I guess it depends on what they're going to do under the condition that makes it insecure.
Mm-hmm. Right. Now, interestingly enough, this particular exploit says new research, so not wildly available in the world, but new research found that the DOS to NT path conversion process can be exploited by threat actors to achieve root-like capabilities to conceal and impersonate files, directories, and processes. So to break that down for people who haven't really dug into file systems like the three of us have, when you open up File Explorer, right, you double click on my computer, whatever is yours, they're looking for a file, and you see my, my desktop and my downloads and whatever.
Windows E.
You see files there, right?
Yeah.
What you don't see are hidden and system files by default.
Yeah, you can turn that on, of course.
You can turn it on, and you can see them. Well, if you did turn them on, or if you're at a command prompt and you type dir, you're going to see the same thing. You're going to see a listing of files.
Yep.
Two files that show up that generally baffle everyone and actually are awesome for hackers is the dot file and the dot file.
And dot file.
What is this dot and dot that show up everywhere, right? Every directory has dot and dot.
Mm-hmm.
So dot means go to the directory above. Because if you couldn't get out of the directory, if you were at the command prompt navigating the drive, which we all did back in the 90s, if you went into, C:\users\Dwayne, and I wanted to go back up to C drive or back up to users, well, if dot wasn't there, I couldn't do it.
Right.
So I say cd, change directory, space, dot, and it knows, Dwayne wants to go higher in the directory structure.
Yep.
So that makes sense. Dot makes sense. It's the move back.
Right.
What's dot?
That's the current directory.
That's the current directory. Why would you ever need a link to the directory you are currently in right now?
You don't. If you want something that's in your directory or below you, you don't have to specify dot /
shorthand.
It's shorthand, and it harkens back to the days of like POSIX and all sorts of other weird Unix style support, because back in a Linux system, they don't have this local path by default. If you try and run an application on a Linux system that's in the directory you're in and you just type the name of the executable, it won't run. It'll say, I don't know where it is. But you have to put // and then the executable. And it's like, you want me to look in the current directory? Oh, yeah, I can do that. Right?
Duh.
In Windows, that's a default. In Windows, they say, your current path should always be /. Just look where you are, right? To run whatever you want. So they have this dot as a lot of backward compatibility, right?
Right.
Fast forward, well, when I'm a security process looking to say, you shouldn't write to C:\Windows /dot. Well, they don't say that, right? They say you shouldn't write to C:\Windows.
Right.
Well, what happens if I add a dot to the end of it? Well, if I add a dot to the end of it, the security program looks at it and goes, no, this is a different directory.
Whole new path.
You can write there, whole new path.
That's so
no rules for that one.
Effed up.
No rules for that one. Even though it points ultimately to the same directory as C:\.
Somebody's sleeping on the job.
Well, that's like, it's not Carl, it's Scarl.
Yeah.
Charles.
Yeah. Your alias.
That's what I get called when I've been bad.
But we know it means the same thing. So it's an interesting, we find these things quite a bit. And it plays very well in like when we're hacking into web servers and that sort of stuff. Where I go, okay, well, if I go to, www.microsoft.com, they're going to serve up whatever web files are in the root of Microsoft.com.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Well, what if I go to www.microsoft.com / what do they serve up? Now, most web servers are pretty good about saying, you can't jump ahead in the root directory. I'm not going to show you the base drive.
Yeah.
But what if I do www.microsoft.com %2f% %AD, whatever, which is all
whatever
sorts
the ASCII
of codes
for
that I can use for
dots.
And it used to be Microsoft back years ago didn't look for that in IIS, and you could jump outside of the directory. And then Microsoft said, you know what, we're going to decode it first, and then we're going to process it. And all you needed to do is then double encode it. So every time you had a %, you would encode that as ASCII % and keep going. And they would decode it once and then run it. And then you would still see the drive. So it's this arms race we constantly see between supporting older technology.
The ultimate sin there is that they're trying to filter out bad stuff.
Mm.
And what you have to do instead is only accept known good stuff.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so if things are encoded, I'm sorry, denial of service. I'm not going to give you that.
Right.
If someone tries to climb in my window and I catch them, I'm not going to let them walk in the door.
You should be coming through the door. Get over there.
Before you check their ID. Can I see your ID, please?
Well, but that's how it works. Oh, you tried to come in through the window? I'm sorry. You're not allowed. Okay, come right through the door. Nope.
Right.
You're banned from the property.
Right.
Yep.
Because you tried to come in the window.
Yeah, so this is classic. This is always what we as hackers look for, are these weird edge cases where it may be an older function, an older technology. It may be support for Lotus 123. If in the code somewhere in Windows, which I would love to read someday, if there's something that says if Lotus 123, then do something, I'm sure there's a way to exploit that where you can report your process as Lotus 123 and at that point get access to certain things.
And this is why SharePoint sucks. Did I say that out loud? I'm sorry. I'm sorry, SharePoint. I have a lot of friends that made a lot of money doing SharePoint consulting.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that they did is because SharePoint people put up SharePoint sites and they don't know how to secure them and they don't know how to use them and they don't know how to configure them.
Dwayne and I taught one of the first SharePoint Microsoft official curriculums.
Yep.
And the labs were unbaked.
Yeah.
And we had to talk to people quite often during that week to say, I can't make this work.
Mm-hmm.
What were you thinking here?
Uh-huh.
That was a long time ago.
That was a long time ago.
That's old stuff.
I thought you were going to say Teams sucks.
Well, we know that. Did you guys see that meme? I saw it on Facebook. It's a little cartoon, like a 50s cartoon where Bob from the Church of the Subgenius kind of dad is looking at the daughter's date and says, hi. Sarah tells me you work for Microsoft. And he says, oh, yes, I'm program manager for Microsoft Teams. And then the dad says, you have exactly 10 minutes to get the F out of my house.
I saw that. I was dying laughing. I was like, yeah, that's about right. Yeah.
All right. So, what are we going to do about this Windows hack?
Yeah. Not much. I mean, honestly, it was found in research. I know. Microsoft already has it on their plan to fix most of these issues. So, my continued ask here would just be patch Tuesdays. Go out and patch. Make sure you're patching. Microsoft will push down these issues. We haven't seen it exploited in the wild yet. So you might see a lot of hype about it at this point, but for now, there's no active exploits.
Yeah.
And a lot of cyber stars would have to align for somebody to be able to exploit these. It's not like somebody over the internet's going to send you a random email that's going to exploit the magic dot path. Just won't happen.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think it's a good time to take a break, don't you?
Sounds good.
All right. We'll be right back with more security this week after these very important messages. And we're back. You're listening to Security This Week. I'm Carl Franklin. That's Patrick Hines and Dwayne LaFlante. And hey, if you don't want to hear ads when you listen to Security This Week, all you got to do is go to our Patreon account. I think it's like $5 a month. Gets you an ad-free MP3 RSS feed. So go to patreon.securitysthisweek.com if you want that. Okay. Let's get to critical Forminator plugin flaw Forminator. Boy, that sounds like a really great plugin. I got to get the Forminator.
I mean, 500,000 sites vulnerable.
It impacts 300,000 WordPress sites, and I guess it's more if you think about it. Patrick just said.
The Forminator. Where do you come up with these names?
Did
your kids ever watch Phineas and Ferb? Disney?
Oh, yeah. Is that the one with the platypus?
Yes. Yeah, yes. And the bad guy, Doofenshmirtz, was always coming up with these wacky machines like the Nose-Inchinator and that sort of stuff. Yeah, the Forminator is on that list. So, interestingly enough, this is a Forminator. It does what it sounds like. It creates forms. So contact forms, little survey forms, whatever, polls, quizzes, forms. Feedback. Yeah, you name it. Places for hackers to put stuff.
Backdoor forms.
So unfortunately, this SQL injection.
Yeah, this was discovered by Japan. Yeah, SQL injection forms. What's your SQL statement here? Thank you. We'll just run it for you. No need to manipulate it. So this was discovered actually by Japan's CERT, CERT, which is very similar to their version of CISA. So their cybersecurity agency, which is really good and reported. But this particular flaw, like Patrick had said, there's SQL injection in there, but there's actually 3 different exploits. So there's CVE 2024-28890, which allows a remote attacker to upload and execute malicious files. Not great. SQL injection flaw allowing remote attackers admin privileges.
Yikes.
And you can execute SQL queries.
Wow.
This one's interesting. So most people think to themselves, SQL queries, who cares, right? So what? Well, I mean, yeah, it's important, and you could do the whole Bobby drop tables and destroy all the data.
Insert and delete are considered SQL queries, even though they don't return anything.
Right. Exactly. But XP command shell.
Insert, update, and delete.
Right? XP command shell is a SQL queryable function.
Yep.
And it gives you the ability to run a command off of the operating system. But there are some other really interesting ones in there. If you own the database. It's criminal career advice. If you own the database, I can actually take a .NET executable, DLL, that'll run a command for me. I can then serialize it into hex. I can then store it in a table. I can call it as a function, and then it will run C# code on the server. That's another sort of interesting exploit.
Why don't you tell the listeners where they can get this evil tool that you speak of?
Yeah.
And that's a joke, Dwayne. Don't do that.
No, not there. And another interesting thing we use all the time at customer sites is when you gain the SQL injection access. Have you guys ever heard of the command called XP Directory?
XP Directory.
XP Directory.
Yeah.
Super interesting SQL command. All it does is it takes a directory path and it lists out all the files that are in that directory path.
Like all of everything below it as well?
Nope, just in that one directory. I mean, you can get it to list all the stuff below if you wanted to by adding a parameter of 1 at the end, but you can get it to list files. So you say, who cares? Well, one, you can actually list like C:\/ programs and see what antivirus is running and that sort of stuff, and maybe find out what you need to avoid. That's number one. But number two, you can set up a listener on the internet over SMB 445 and have it reach out to // your internet IP address /test.
That's definitely number two.
Whatever account, I know, right? Whatever account the SQL server is running as will reach out to you. And if it has NT authentication on it, you'll see the hash for the username and password. So there's all sorts of really, like, most people worry about SQL server being, they could get access to my data and there's data breach and that sort of stuff. But there's a lot of other damaging things that can happen.
Yikes.
When a hacker gets SQL injection rights on your database. Be careful, kids.
The Shorminator plugin. For WordPress.
So patch.
Go patch.
Let's go patch. Yeah, go patch. It's an old story. Okay, so one more story before we get to the big one. And this is a maximum severity, and by that we mean 10 out of 10. Flowmon bug has a public exploit patch now. This is in Bleeping Computer. Tell us about this.
I honestly think a 10 out of 10 should mean that there's an asteroid about to hit the Earth.
Yeah, right.
An Ellie event.
but we've seen a few.
Yep.
What's this one all about?
So first off, Progress's Flowmon is a performance tracking, diagnostics, network detection, response, all sorts of sort of think logging, understanding, what's going on in your networking world feature. There are all sorts of companies listed in this by this article by Bleeping Computer, including Sega, Kia, TDK, Volkswagen, Orange, you name it. There's all sorts of companies using this. It's pretty ubiquitous, logging and flow tracking, performance tracking application.
Yeah.
And in this particular exploit, you'll one of the reasons it's a 10 out of 10 is remember we talked about, you should care about how easy it is to run.
Right.
And how accessible it is to run. If it's super easy to exploit, but it's sitting, behind a locked door and nobody can get to it, who cares? Right. This one, unfortunately, there is a website for the Progress Flowmon website where you have a login, username, and password. You can bypass it entirely. And put a command shell on there and then just run whatever commands you want. So in the article we post, you'll see there's like 2 commands you can run that will upload a shell for you, and then you just run it just like you're at the command prompt as a privileged user as root.
Jeez.
Yeah, that's an oversight.
Cool. So, and they obviously have a patch for it.
And on top of that, proof of concept code's already on the internet. So that's the other reason why this is so highly rated, is because it's not like you need an AI to figure out how to exploit that.
Whoa, foreshadowing.
Oh, wait a second.
Foreshadowing.
You can just go look at this article and you'll know exactly how to exploit it.
Let's talk about that because it'll come in handy in a minute. So we have the concept of a 0 day. And the 0 day is when code comes out and it's not code. A vulnerability becomes known and it is not patched and it's new in the wild.
Right.
And people who have already got an exploit for that have a leg up and have probably been exploiting it.
Right.
But once it's patched, then it's a 1 day, and usually it takes some time for the bad guys like Dwayne to reverse engineer that patch to come up with an attack for those who haven't patched fast enough.
Did you call me a bad guy?
Yeah,
I just did. Well, so
you're one of the good
Dwayne,
bad guys.
How long does it take? It takes a varying length of time in our experience to develop a 1 day. It's not something you just whip out typically.
No, I mean, you have to wait for the patch to come out. Then you usually, depending on what the application is, if it's let's say it's a PHP application, right? That's easier to look through, or a .NET application. The patch is easier for me to look through because you can see the code.
It's not binary.
Exactly. But if we're talking like a Windows patch, that's actually a little bit more difficult. I got to do patch diffing. Assembly. I got to start looking through. Yeah, exactly. And I got to see what did they actually change from libraries and assemblies. But I'd say from the easiest patches, a couple days, to the more complicated patches, probably a week or 2 to get a safe.
So what you're saying is
expert level.
Yeah. So what you're saying is vulnerabilities are discovered, and if they're not patched and the vulnerability is published, right? And there isn't a patch, these companies are screwed.
Yeah.
And now even more because of our clickbait story. So if this doesn't scare you, I don't know what will. GPT-4, which is the current model that ChatGPT uses, can exploit most vulnerabilities just by reading threat advisories. Existing AI technology can allow hackers to automate exploits for public vulnerabilities in minutes flat. Very soon, diligent patching will no longer be optional.
Yeah, I think it goes beyond that. I think diligent patching means that you're going to patch as soon as the patch is available and as soon as you can. This speaks to the fact that if I've been waiting for you to trip up, if I'm trying to spearfish you, I'm not going to wait. As soon as the patch is available, within minutes, I might have an exploit. Actually, I might even have an exploit before the patch is available if the description of the vulnerability is verbose enough.
Right.
And that's the scary part. So I think we have to become more, I guess, a little less verbose about what the vulnerabilities are until everybody's patched.
Well, it's a fine line, right? Because we've always said that security through obscurity is not a good idea. Like it's always a good idea. And this is the mantra, right? That's been for years. Get it out there so that people know about it, so they can create patches, so they can patch it before the bad guys get to you. Well, now the bad guys have an advantage.
Well, security through obscurity is not you should never have security through obscurity your only defense. But we don't paint M1 tanks bright orange. We camouflage them.
Very good point.
So we want it to be a defense in depth, a defense in layers. And so what Dwayne said is that Windows is harder because it's not, there's no code released. It's delivered in a different way. The patch is more harder to back up. I think we're going to have to become a little less open door about these patches and about what the vulnerabilities actually are.
Yeah.
And I hate that, but I don't know how else to combat that.
I was going to say, it's tough. This is the same argument, though, and I do want to come back to this article, but this is the same argument that hackers, public security researchers, people like myself have been up against constantly, where we go and find a bug, right? Find a security exploit, whatever. We talk about it we obviously do responsible disclosure and make sure the company knows, make sure they patch. Yeah. Then we go talk about it, right? We make sure as many people know as possible. Hey, this
patches out.
Exactly. And now everybody knows about it. And the argument was always, what are you guys doing? Why are you telling the world about this exploit?
Right, sure.
Nobody should know about it, and we should just make sure everybody's patched.
Criminal career advice.
Right. The problem is, you got to assume the hackers already know. You got to assume breach. You got to assume you've already been compromised, and you got to start from there. You can't just assume they're just not going to figure it out. There's some smart people looking to steal money, right? Yeah. And get into your organization. So I don't know about dumbing down the CVEs and that sort of thing, but I agree there has to be either a better patching implementation, or companies need to be more diligent about contacting their customers or whatever.
I'm glad you brought that up because, the programmer in me says, oh, well, we should just automate patching. All right. But if you have an automated patching system, that is another vector that can be hacked. Mm-hmm. And if those get hacked, you're completely screwed. Right.
What's happening is the window from when an exploit is described, because they're not talking about in this article, as far as I can tell, that the code of the patch is being reverse engineered by ChatGPT. It's just the description of the vulnerability.
Yeah.
So that's a different thing.
You're absolutely right. And that's interesting. So in this particular article, coming back to the article, the thought process was...
From dark reading, by the way.
Yeah. The thought process was, could we take a bunch of different open source projects, and all of them have some known CVE. Mm-hmm. And could we have, just from the description in the known CVE, have different LLMs, large language models, discover how to exploit them? Right? That's it. And according to this, let me see right here. I had it right here. Here we go. Okay. Of the 10 models, so they evaluated a bunch of different models. So most of us know about ChatGPT, right? Mm-hmm, but there's all sorts of other models out there.
That was the one that was successful.
There's not just ChatGPT, but they did GPT 3.5, which is also ChatGPT, but GPT 3.5, Meta's Llama 2, and they had a bunch more. They had 10 models. Of the 10 models, 9 of them couldn't come up with any exploits just from the description.
Wow.
However, ChatGPT-4 exploited successfully 13 of the CVEs it was given, which is 87% of the total. And they said the other 2 that it was given, the only reason it didn't bag those 2 were for mundane reasons.
Yeah,
like it just
things that could be corrected pretty easily.
Okay. Well, if you don't have good communications with the security vulnerabilities and all that, and somebody who's watching the clock, watching for them, could you also use GPT-4, ChatGPT, to protect yourself? Could you create a system that uses AI to find those vulnerabilities, download the patches, and apply them? I would trust that more than I would trust something that allows anybody to come out with something. Yeah.
But the problem is that the defender has to be right every time and the hacker only has to be right once.
Yeah.
So, yes, but a big part of our defense was it took a lot of skill to create an exploit from a patch, let alone from a description of what the vulnerability is. It was expert level. It was something that I was pretty confident that 99% of the hackers couldn't do. I mean, there's people on Hack the Box that can hack a box and they can exploit, known vulnerabilities and get shells, and they still can't do this stuff. It's very rarefied. Dwayne is a unique type of resource to be able to do that in his team. That's going to become in the hands of everyone now.
So it's interesting you say that because when you read a little bit further down in this article, I agree with you, Patrick. I'm not sure I agree with the sort of sentiment on this article. It says at the moment, this does not unlock new capabilities an expert human couldn't do. That's true, right?
Right.
As such, I think it's important for organizations to apply security best practices and avoid getting hacked as these AIs are getting smarter. So although they try and tamp that down, it's okay. Listen, expert humans can do this anyways. The thing they don't highlight is there's not that many expert humans that do this, right?
And most of them are on the side of good. I know some of them are on the side of bad, but honestly, the people who resort to crime in a lot of cases aren't the brightest. So, and finally, the setup they explain here is not trivial.
No.
With the current technology, you have to set up an AI with a framework. That starts to get complicated. I can figure out how to do it, but
there's all sorts
I don't think
of
but
stuff.
somebody's going to create a package that you can just unzip and install and run.
I'll do that. Hold on.
I know you will.
It'll be on my GitHub tomorrow.
So, this is part of the arms race. The arms race has gotten interesting again. Me and Dwayne thought 20 years ago we wouldn't hear about SQL injection after a year and a half.
Right.
That turned out not to be the case. This is just another thing we have to defend against, and AI is going to make it harder to defend against and easier to defend against.
And something that will make it easier for you to defend against is a software bill of materials.
Exactly. Yeah. So you can understand, because you find out a week later that, we had that, we should have patched it. That might be too late.
Yeah. At the very least, it might be a good idea to use some AI to periodically, meaning like every 15 minutes or so, go check the threats and vulnerabilities and compare them to your software bill of materials and alert you.
Yeah.
Just in case you don't have alerts set up for all of these things that you have.
Or you could listen to Security This Week.
Well, yeah, but we don't
cover it all.
We don't give you all of them.
Yeah. I'd love to, but this would be a 5-hour podcast once a day.
Yeah.
And that's if we're in auctioneer mode. And we have a
sold to the highest ransomware
itch in the armpit.
Yeah.
All right, you guys. Well, it's been fun and scary, as it always is when we get together and talk. And we hope the listeners, you got something out of it too.
Thanks, everybody.
So we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.